Hello, everyone. Welcome to Natty News, the nattiest news show in the world. My name is Aaron Natty, and I'm joined once again with my co-host, Pat, Master Chef Woo. Pat, how are you doing?
I think it should be Anwar MasterChef Denani, but I am doing great. It's first day of school again, which is probably the first time someone ever said that in July. And Anwar, for you, it's the 4th of July in the States. How's it going?
Yes, it's another beautiful Freedom Day. Although I didn't do too much. I've been looking for a new apartment, so I was finally able to secure one. So that's gonna be great. And then did a run, did some good cardio. It was a hot day today in Austin, but I kind of like it. It feels like I'm in a sauna perpetually. So and I love saunas, so I just kind of like try to think about that. Make my have my skin all like glowing afterwards. Feels good. How was the first day of school?
It was pretty boring. We went through the morning talking about our clinical placements, which wasn't very interesting. And in the afternoon, we kind of talked about making a learning plan, which was okay, but it was really good to catch up with all the different classmates and hear about their experiences and knowing that there's really only one more year of classes before I am very close to graduation. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in school for so long, and I feel like this might be it for you. I feel like once you get your physical therapist, you might be done. So it's truly been a journey for you. Like, I don't know how you've done it, but it definitely is an accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm just trying to hold off on adult responsibilities. So you got to keep doing more degrees. You got to keep pumping them out. 5 sets of five, right?
Oh, well, with that note, one of the things we want to talk about today is one of those adult responsibilities, and it is cooking. It's talking about making those meals, getting those macros, getting those micros, making those gains, because truly, if you want to get big, you have to eat big. Which, funny enough, you actually really don't. From what we talked about before in Natty News, you only need like 300 extra calories, so that's kind of a false statement.
Oh, if you're not eating enough, then you have to eat bigger. For
True,
sure.
true. But no, I think like one it's kind of funny. A lot of people when they get into fitness, they also kind of get into cooking a little more because they start meal prepping and they start realizing like, okay, I can't eat out all my meals to do this. So and I want to have certain macros in my meals. I want to make sure I have enough proteins, fats, carbs, all that. So it's funny. It feels like fitness is a gateway into cooking for a lot of people.
Yeah, but on the other side of things, for a lot of people, I think a lot of people get stuck into never cooking. Like I know, for example, have I used to never really cook, and I still, as you know, I'm a pretty terrible cook. And I find that when we talk about exercise, and where me and you have spent so many episodes talking about ways to make exercise fun and automate it, right? We talk about planning and like setting up the environment, putting in your schedule and finding different workouts to make it more fun. But when it comes to nutrition, I find there's still a lot of people who are in that chicken, rice, and broccoli, very like standard boring meals type of situation. So I think this episode hopefully can shed some light on like practical ways that we can make cooking more fun, because those of you who don't know, Anwar's a very good and creative cook, and even without a lot of materials, when he lived alone at UBC, for example, he was able to make me some stellar meals.
I appreciate it, Pat. I think, I would say I'm not the fanciest of cooks, but I think something I'm very passionate about, and something I think I'm pretty good at, is making very macro-friendly meals. I think I find that food is one of the few luxuries in life where it's actually not too much work or it's not too expensive either to actually produce a pretty good quality thing, and then making that kind of macro-friendly and something you can eat on kind of a daily basis is something I'm very passionate about. I mean, um, one of the things that I think a lot of people when they get into the fitness lifestyle, they just assume it's all going to be, just salads and chicken breast and plain rice. And I mean, you and I know that's kind of BS. That's not really how it has to be. And I think you can actually eat a lot of very delicious food while still hitting your macros and hitting all the goals you have.
Definitely, and I'm really excited to hear more from you, because I think a lot of people, I think just as a lot of people make well either make excuses or have legitimate reasons where they can't exercise very well, a lot more people, I think, have trouble finding the time and feeling like they have the competence to make good, healthy meals on a regular basis. So, yeah, I'm super stoked.
Definitely, definitely. I think before we kind of maybe jump into some of these like actual like tips and tricks, I think maybe I want to talk a little bit about the science of nutrition and full disclosure, neither Pat or I are nutritionists. Actually, I think Pat, you haven't even taken a class on nutrition, have you?
I took a number in university. I took maybe like 3 or 4 courses in university, but that by no means makes me an expert. I know like very basic. I know macronutrients, micronutrients, and where I know we've talked a little bit about bioavailability and things, but yeah, very basic level in terms of the actual science in this episode.
Yeah, so I just want to give a disclosure that like anything we talk on here, like take it with a bit of grain of salt. Although I do love reading and learning more about it, we are far from experts, but hopefully we can still teach a few things and give a little tips and tricks to help you guys out. Um, so before we kind of start talking some more details of actual tips, let's talk a little bit about definitions. So macronutrients, or most people probably know what macros are, but they're your protein, your fat, your carbs, kind of the building blocks of the human body, really. Like it's what we get our energy, it's what rebuilds our muscles, it's what affects our hormones. It really is crazy about how much those three nutrients really affect us. Um, and when a lot of times when people are going to any kind of body recomposition, that's kind of what they only focus on is like, okay, how much protein am I getting? How much fat am I getting? How many carbs I'm getting? And I am definitely guilty of that too. I think it was a very common thing when me and Pat were in high school and stuff about if it fits your macros. Like that's the only thing that matters. Although I feel now people are starting to really put a lot more respect on the micronutrients. You have Stan Efferding, who has the vertical diet, which it talks about kind of having a steady caloric surplus, but as well as making sure you have the building blocks, that you're getting your micronutrients, that you're filling your diet with very micronutrient heavy foods. And that kind of like the importance that you have the mechanisms to gain muscle, to recover properly, to have good brain function, to have good focus. All that comes from these building blocks of your micronutrients, so your vitamins, your minerals. Some people include fiber as a micronutrient. I personally do, but some keep it as a macro. Either way, all this stuff is very, very important to kind of build through anything. Um, but yeah, anything you wanted to add with micro and macronutrients, Pat?
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of nails in the head, and now I think in regards to the macros too, I think some people. I think one thing that kind of gets tossed away in the health and fitness kind of space is that people do neglect carbs. Now, I don't neglect carbs. I eat way too many potato chips sometimes. But I know a lot of people they get too deep into it and they're too focused on their protein, their vegetables, and whatnot. But neglect the effect that carbs do have, and that main effect is to provide energy, which is very key um, in filling up your glycogen stores, in which you don't have them. Then every time you exercise, you're sort of in a more depleted state. I think a lot of people, I've had conversations with people who have, for example, skipped breakfast and only had maybe a couple eggs or whatnot, and they wonder why they felt really drained during the workout. And there are many scenarios where it simply comes down to allowing yourself to have carbs. So I think I've heard a lot that it's really been catastrophized. Everyone's trying to say that carbs are evil or that taking out carbs will make you more lean, but having carbs, especially before and after your workout, is extremely important to give you that energy to power through in terms of the macro side. Protein, everyone knows the benefits of. They essentially help you rebuild everything outside of just muscle. Your whole body's constantly regenerating itself, and protein is kind of a key to all those functions. And fats again, making sure you having a little bit of saturated fats, but also emphasizing those good fats like from vegetables like avocado, as I'm sure you'll talk about later, and more. Yeah, that's all I had to add.
You know, just a little tidbit too about the carbs, one of the things too, and something I'm a big believer too is like, and something actually 9 years were a big believer in is sustainability. And carbs, a lot of carby food is delicious. So I think kind of cutting out all that makes it you have to do more discipline to hit those goals. And I think one of the name of the game when you're doing any type of body recomposition is making it as easy as you can. Like if you want to have like, some pasta, there's ways you can make it so it can still be very macro friendly and you can still get that craving filled so you can focus on discipline in other aspects. So as I'm saying with pasta, there's ways you can make it macro friendly so that you don't have to have the same discipline, and you can use that discipline in other ways, maybe not drinking as much, or maybe making sure you go a little harder in the gym and other things. So I really do think the name of the game really is trying to make as much of traditionally unhealthy food into kind of healthier variants. I feel like that's been my best strategy for actually like cutting any body recomposition rather than just like completely taking out food. I think I always feel like it's a mistake when people just want to fully cut out food.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I also think there's a problem with people inherently categorizing food as healthy and unhealthy. There's one uh, trainer and Sohee Lee who's really heavily on the social media talks a lot about it, where um, we've kind of like as a like health and fitness industry catastrophized foods, like things like carbohydrates, eating noodles, eating snacks, like making it inherently sound like a bad thing, but it's all about like portion control, right? Having some snacks or having pasta a couple types a week might not be a bad thing. It actually isn't a bad thing at all for your health. And if you're trying to gain weight or maintain weight, carbohydrates are one of the most energy dense sources, right? So it's not a bad thing to have a lot of calories if you're trying to gain some weight. Like if you're not going to eat carbs, it's going to be very hard to eat what you need to do.
Completely, completely. Well, so now above the macro and micronutrients, something else that I am very interested in is the whole concept, well, the whole idea of bioavailability. So bioavailability is like when you have like a carrot, and let's say a carrot has a certain amount of like vitamin C that you see on MyFitnessPal, and so you eat this carrot and you're like, oh boy, I've gotten all this vitamin C. I am so healthy. Now, have you truly gotten all those great micronutrients? The thing is, the way you cook and even the way you eat food can affect its bioavailability, which is mind-blowing. Foods like spinach, you actually want to cook it slightly, like even just steaming it or like quickly sauteing it, and it significantly increases the nutrition profile. You're getting much more vitamin A, E, fiber, zinc, calcium, everything from just slightly cooking it. And same with other vegetables like carrots as well. Carrots actually has a different nutrient profile where if you kind of bake them compared to having it raw. So it really is one of these crazy things where there's not really one best option. So it's not like, oh, you should have all your food raw. I mean, that's not true. You're actually missing out on possible bioavailability of some nutrients if you don't cook it. And then people say like, oh, you should only boil your food. Well, you're also losing on some other type of nutrients. So it really is truly interesting about the variety of nutrient profiles can come from based off how you cook your food. Now, of course, there is like other advantages. I mean, when you boil some food, of course, you're not adding any calories compared to deep frying. So there is some other consideration you should take into it. But something I'm a big believer in, and I'm stealing this from a nutritionist. I forgot her name, but one of the key things with nutrition is kind of having a variety of foods in your diet and cooking them in a variety of different ways is really a great way to get such a broad spectrum of different nutrients and kind of fueling your body and making sure you kind of have all bases covered. It really is one of the key things I feel like for nutrition is variety.
Man, and just hearing that statement, I feel personally like it's a very simple statement that you're saying, and I feel like I don't do very well at that. I either generally eat not the best, or when I do, I tend to eat the same thing very, very often, like the same meat, same vegetables, same snacks. I tend to cook in the same way too. Like I abuse my instant pot, or I eat my fruits raw. So it's a very simple and effective consideration that you're saying here.
Hey, dude, instant pots are great, especially when you go to class and stuff. That's a good thing for the people who have to like yeah go to the office or go into class or also who don't even like cooking much. I think instant pots are great ways where you can make unbelievably tasty food with kind of minimal effort.
Instant Pot is the single greatest thing ever, and even someone like me who can't chop an onion can operate this thing. It is amazing.
Yeah. Well, so we kind of like talked a little bit about the science and a bit about the bioavailability. So, um, with that being said, I wanted to make sure we talked about that because, again, my kind of mythos is really focusing on variety. I really do try to have variety. So let's kind of start off with the grocery store. Pat, when you go to the grocery store, what do you try to get? Like, do you go in with like a list or what do you kind of go? What's your strategy for the grocery store?
Absolutely got to have a list. That's pretty key. Now, I tend to so food for me goes for like food with my parents and my family. So it's always pretty much the same routine every week. There are snacks on my list, of course, because I'm off season and I have my snacks, but we don't have to talk about that here. But then there's vegetables and there's meat, and then there's like dairy and eggs and type of stuff. That's kind of how I separate it. There's typically always like staple vegetables that we get for home. Now, there's some Chinese veggies that my folks get that I'm not really sure what they're called, but I tend to like things like bell peppers, and celery and spinach, and sometimes oh, I'm blanking, and asparagus a lot of the time. So I usually tend to pick two or three for the week. And then I go to my meats, and again, I tend to pick two or three items that I want, and it doesn't really matter. I tend to rotate between fish, chicken, turkey, and beef, whether that be like beef stew or ground beef, ground turkey, bone in or bone out. But those are kind of my staples. Then I go and get myself some eggs, and besides that, like I don't really change up the routine that often. Like I might change up the veggies I get, or I might change out a fruit or two, but almost every week it's like the same thing for me.
Well, Pat, it's kind of funny. We have a very similar shopping philosophy, and I love to hear it. So I'm kind of the same as you. When I go, I try to get a variety of different vegetables for that week, and then a bunch of different meats for that week, and then different carb sources. So maybe for one week I'll get some like pasta and chickpeas, or maybe another week I'll get some rice and potatoes or something like that. So. Um, and then for proteins, yeah, kind of go through for like maybe having some type of beef or chicken or even under very rare occurrences, maybe some seafood. And I really like kind of your approach, and I really like that because I think that's a good way. Because I feel like when you're at the grocery store, you when you physically see everything, it kind of gives your body a way of like, oh, what am I craving? Like, do I want to have chicken this week, or do I want to have beef this week? And I like to think our bodies are very self-regulating. So when you kind of look at this food and you want that, it's kind of your body telling yourself that like, hey, we've been lacking some certain nutrients. Let's go get this and eat this week so our body can kind of fill the gaps that we're missing. That's kind of like a way I look at it, although I don't have any science to back that up.
Well, yeah, like totally, and I think that totally makes sense too. And also, obviously, like you walk in with your budget, and then beyond that point, like if chicken costs like however, let's say hypothetically $2 a pound, which it never does, and turkey costs 2.20 a pound, but you want to eat turkey, like I would say just go and get yourself the turkey, right? It's like not a big deal, and especially if you're really in the habit of eating at home and you're not eating out a lot, like like you're already saving yourself a whole bunch anyways.
Yeah, no, love it. So, Pat, I think we're on the same boat when it comes to the groceries, and I completely agree with that. Especially something I've become a very big fan of, is actually these chickpea pastas, and you're seeing them a lot more often now. Have you ever tried them before?
I have not had the chance to try chickpea pasta. I One thing I do have a lot is this egg white pasta, which is like I can't remember, but it's like pretty high in protein. Like it's like 20% calories from protein, which is pretty good.
Dude, no, I need to try that out. That sounds great. Yeah, there's also like lentil pasta too. And these pastas are very like high in protein and high in fiber, which is fantastic. And now a bunch like I guess the big complaint is they are more expensive too. Like a box of it might be maybe triple what you'd be paying for the regular stuff. But I kind of feel like though, even with triple the price, a box of pasta can normally last me maybe 3 meals, maybe 4 meals. Just 3 to 4 meals. So if maybe a box of pasta is normally $1 and I get this one, we're talking about like a difference of like $1 per meal. So of course, like if you are in a very tight budget, maybe hold off. But otherwise, I really do think sometimes it's worth paying the extra for some of the more nutritionally dense foods.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it just all comes down to thinking about what you want to budget for them. And I think if you're intelligent about your choices, like meals can be very surprisingly affordable now, especially if you go the route of like being creative and using vegetarian and vegan protein sources. Like, what is that meal? Like Indian dal, I believe, is just like lentil, a whole bunch of seasonings and whatnot, and that's like a high protein meal. And I really think it doesn't cost much at all because the legumes and beans are so affordable.
Dude, you hit the nail, and I'm glad you mentioned dal because that is one of the. It is actually a staple food. I like to cook a lot, and it is very high in protein and is very cheap and it is very delicious. Um, but let's talk actually a little bit about the cooking. Pat, do you normally follow a recipe when you cook?
Yes, because I cannot be left to my own devices.
No,
Yeah.
that that's completely fine, and I think recipes are super important. But I think one issue I see and something I've overcome as like a home cook is recipes are never gospel. And
Yes. Yes.
I think the purpose of a recipe is if you're trying to cook something new, it's nice to have someone hold your hand. And I think a very good recipe would explain to you why we're doing every step. Like an example is, Pat, if let's say you want to make some macaroni and cheese. Most recipes will ask you to make a roux. I know you probably won't be making it because of lactose intolerant, but for people who are curious, when you make macaroni and cheese, the first thing you're gonna do is probably make a roux, and a roux is a mixture of butter and flour, where then you add milk, and it creates a sauce. And if you just kind of follow the motions, you can make the sauce and you'll make a delicious thing. But if you kind of think about it and be like, okay, what's going on? All right, we're making the roux. The roux is actually a mixture of flour and fat, and this kind of creates a thickener when you kind of boil it. So in water, so you use the milk as kind of water, but with that fundamental block, you can make so many different sauces. Like maybe you don't want a very heavy, creamy sauce. You could then use butter, a flour, and maybe chicken stock, and now you can actually have maybe more of a gravy sauce. And Pat, let's say you want to make a fully like vegetarian sauce, you could then use like coconut oil with flour and use some vegetable stock, and there you have a beautiful sauce you can have for your meal. And you know what? Let's even do it. Let's say you want to make a high protein sauce. You can use any type of fat again. Use barley flour, which has a similar amount of starch as regular flour. And then with this barley flour, you then have a very high protein base. You can add in any liquid, like let's say again, we use milk. There you go. You have a sauce that has like 20 grams of protein in it. And like, it's mind blowing. So I think one of the key things with cooking is understanding the steps you're doing. Like, another example is if you want to make like, let's say like some chicken tikka. One of the first things you would do is you would do a yogurt marinade. Now, why do we do a yogurt marinade? Well, the idea is that the yogurt has acid that actually breaks down some of the chicken fibers to make it more moist. But then with this idea, you understand then acid plus meat allows for tenderizing. So if you get like a cheap cut of steak, and then you put some acid on it. You could use vinegar, you could use lime, and then boom, you kind of then tenderize it. So when you cook it, you get more of an enjoyable feeling. And I really think one of the key things of cooking is kind of understanding these mechanisms and then kind of playing around with these mechanisms to make them fit whatever you're trying to make, what type of flavors or textures or feelings you want to feel when you eat your meal.
Oh man, we're getting hit with a advanced food science lesson here. Well, then Anwar, I must ask you, as someone who has very basic skills, what are kind of your biggest, I hate the word hack, right? But whatever some of your biggest tips of like flavor combinations or like food chemistry that you find enhances your foods that you use on the most regular basis.
Man, okay. I
Like you
think
mentioned the yogurt and acid one, like that sounds like a super good and simple tip, right? Because it doesn't really take skill. It's just more about applying that tips. But do you have any other ones?
you you know I think, and this is probably going to be the biggest tip for people who are more used to bodybuilding meals. Um, and I think the biggest tip I could have is make sure you always you make sure you think about the cooking fat you're using. Um, and because Pat, one of the big things when we taste food, the main transfer of flavor to our tongue is fat. That when the fat is actually really where the flavor comes from. You've probably heard it a lot, but it really is true where fat actually, when you cook food, the fat kind of captures that flavor. And so when you eat something, the fat coats your tongue and that gives your flavor receptors the taste of the food. So when you eat something and it's very bland, it normally is because of a lack of a fat. And so then fat is kind of like the transfer of flavor. Now, this becomes very tricky because as you know, and many people know, fat is the most calorie dense macronutrient. You're talking about 9 calories per gram of fat compared to 4 calories for carbs and protein. But
Right.
with that being said, to kind of go back to our beginning, we want something sustainable. And if your food doesn't taste good, it's not going to be sustainable. So I would say to always use a type of cooking fat. It doesn't have to be that much, actually. You can be very shocked with how much your food is enhanced by just adding a little bit of fat. And also, I think there should be some thought into what fat you're using. Like, um, obviously, butter is a very good cooking fat for, especially if you're using kind of low heat. You can have a very kind of creamy feeling and taste, which is very nice. Something I'm actually a very big fan of is ghee. I think ghee gives this unbelievably like earthy flavor to a lot of your foods, and I love cooking with it. I think it's very fantastic. Of course, there's olive oil, which provides a very aromatic type of flavoring, which is very nice, especially with foods that have a lot of herbs in them and garlic and stuff. Is delicious. Um, I actually would advise maybe going against some of these neutral flavored oils, like stuff like canola oil or vegetable oil or avocado oil. I kind of feel like if you're going to be adding fat to your food, you would want it to enhance your flavor. And then these
Um,
neutral flavored fats really kind of offer nothing. So you're kind of in a way wasting calories, in my opinion.
that is a very interesting way to think about it. So, okay, now this is very personal and selfish for me to ask. I don't consume butter for my own personal reasons. Um, So would you suggest what would be your top suggestion in terms of like a regular use oil? Like obviously ghee sounds like a pretty good idea, but I also don't want to be using that every single meal for health purposes.
To be fair, I mostly just use butter, ghee, and olive oil. Those are three I think kind of cover most bases for me. So, butter is used a lot for like very kind of delicate things like eggs. I use butter mostly. Ghee I use for most of my meat, and stuff. And then I use olive oil if I'm making something very kind of herby.
All right, I will
So
get some olive oil and some ghee.
yeah, and I would say play around with it. Like I think try different cooking fats. Another thing I would recommend very much is always over salt your food. I think a lot of people don't understand how much salt needs to go into food for it to really, because salt is like the number one flavor enhancer you can have. And the idea also of sodium linking to heart issues is true, but at the same time, if you are living a pretty fit life and you do consume quite a bit of water, it actually seems to be pretty negligible. There's actually a very famous study of Koreans. Koreans eat a very high in sodium diet. I mean, we're talking about foods like kimchi, which are incredibly high in sodium. But Korea has some of the lowest heart disease in the world, and one of the reasons is because they do live a pretty active lifestyle compared to a lot of North American and European countries. So it really isn't kind of the sodium is the issue. It more so is kind of the lifestyle. And again, salt is one of the best flavor enhancers you can have besides fat.
Wow, that's you know, I can really relate to that in the last couple of years of my life when I had to start weight cutting and cutting out salt. Every single meal was incredibly depressing. So I concur with you on that, and I started and this must sound super basic to you, but I started salting my meats and letting them marinate for a few hours. It's this they call it dry brining. That's what Google Foods calls it. And oh my god, my meats taste so much better. It was such a mind blowing thing to me.
Dude, and you know what? That's completely true. Like, yeah, no, because you probably know this, but for the listeners, salt it then has osmosis where the salt actually can go inside the meat and then take out some water, so you can actually have a much better texture, and your meat is seasoned throughout. It's amazing. And see, Pat, that's actually another beautiful building block about cooking. So, an example is like when you marinate something too, you have to think, why are we marinating it? The marinade only really stays on the surface level of the food, but kind of then there's some value. So you always want to make sure that your marinade has a salt component in it. So you can get that kind of brining effect. So I actually really like marinating with soy sauce because you get the whole salt brining effect, but as well you then get a very nice like savory flavor around the food when you cook it because of the soy sauce and the soybean like fermented flavor, which I love. I think soy sauce is a super great thing, and also it's mostly protein.
That is true. Soy is mostly protein. Yeah, these are like I really like those type of things. Those little simple tips that like they don't even take more time outside of your day. It's just like about application.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too, and I was mentioning this too about variety, where when people think about cooking, a lot of people get into the habit of meal prepping for an entire week, which again, I can see why, but I also feel like there's a lot of it kind of makes it hard to commit. If you have to eat the same thing every day for a week, unless, I mean, of course, some people have families and stuff where it's the only way they can get through it, which is understandable. But for those who are, kind of maybe still living a college or single life, I really do think that having variety in your meals is super key. And I think one of the keys is also finding recipes you can bang out really quick. Like, I love breakfast, Pat. I love scrambled eggs. I love all that stuff. So every morning, I make sure I always have like a fresh cooked breakfast. And I find recipes which I can do stuff concurrently. Like an example is, and this is kind of funny, when I make my scrambled eggs, the first thing to do is I get my toast toasted, so I throw it in the oven and then turn it on. And so as I do that, I then go and start brushing my teeth. And so then I brush my teeth, finish that. Then I start the eggs. So I crack the eggs, start whisking them, getting them all frothy, and then get the pan ready with some butter. And then when they're ready, I put them in. And now with scrambled eggs, one of the big things is you want to have very tiny curds. But I know that it takes about a minute for the pan to get hot enough for the curds to start firming. So in that time, then I start, getting like changed, and so I spend a minute getting changed, and then when the curds are starting to firm, then you start moving the pan around, getting them all ready, getting it everything creamy. By then the toast is done, so you take out the toast from the oven, and then I like to use a little hummus spread. So I spread the hummus, and when I'm done with that, the eggs are finished. And then I have my whole meal ready. I'm changed. I brush my teeth. I'm ready. I finish my meal and I'm at the dough. And cooking it truly maybe added 5, maybe 8 minutes to my day.
That is incredibly impressive. Also, wouldn't necessarily I would not recommend that for someone who's never done that. I, for one, I don't eat breakfast anymore because I wake up too late. And I think if I tried to do what you just did, I would have burned down the kitchen and somehow failed at brushing my teeth too.
But you see, I think though the key for cooking and like being able to cook often, because I do try to cook most of my meals in a day, is being able to do stuff concurrently. So when you have a recipe that takes 30 minutes, let's say, how much of that 30 minutes is real work? Maybe like honestly 8 minutes. It really most time is just like waiting for something to cook in a pan.
It really is. It really is. Me being less skilled, to take it from the beginner level, the way I kind of meal prep is like kind of like you. I don't like to have full meals like put into like a Tupperware, but I like to have like a carb source, a meat source, and like a veggie source, and a sauce kind of ready. And then I kind of like my default is like an easy stir fry. So for example, I might do like a and put some oil on, as you would suggest, and then I would throw in some marinated chicken meat or whatnot into the pan. And then when that gets warm, I'll throw in some peppers I got. And then when all that's like mostly cooked, I throw in this like generic sauce mixture that I made, and then throw in noodles and make this like really easy stir fry in 10 minutes. That's kind of, I really do prefer that rather than pre-made meals for the same reasons you did. They get kind of boring, they're kind of stale. And with that method, I learned it from a YouTube video a while ago, but you can kind of like mix and match ingredients too, which is nice. And my I like to do things concurrently too, but that's usually me watching anime while I cook rather than trying to get ready for work.
Hey, no problem with that, and I love that. I kind of like that idea of like, and I do it too, where I have some stuff already kind of pre-made and kind of just like throw it in and get everything ready, which is a fantastic idea. But something else I think about too is what foods reheat well. Like
Hmm.
I've for me, I have not figured out a way to reheat chicken well. I think chicken always tastes gross when you reheat it. I can't find a way, like even in the stove or even on the frying pan or even the microwave is awful. But so when if I can't reheat a food well, it then kind of ruins the meal. So then I always try to maybe portion where like the chicken component I might do fresh, but everything else I could do. So like let's say you want to do like a whole stir fry that you were mentioning, you could make a large amount of like vegetables and sauce already, and that can reheat very well in the microwave or on the stovetop. But then just do the chicken and then mix it all together, and you'd have a fantastic meal. That's something I very much think about when I have to go into the office is what foods microwave well that will be enjoyable to eat even if I only have access to a microwave.
And you're thinking next level. What's your I mean, I imagine you're not making chicken at work, so what's the go-to lately?
So to go through with microwave meals is actually a lot of like lentils and dals. I
Oh
find
yeah.
those reheat unbelievably well in microwaves, and the reason why is let's do a little physics, Pat. How does a microwave work?
Uh, Radiation? Right?
You're not wrong. So a microwave, surprising enough, it sends microwaves onto your food, and those microwaves they excite the water particles. And so then these water particles, they have all this energy. They got these microwaves hit on them, and so then they evaporate, and so it kind of steams your food. And
Yeah.
that's also why, like if you put some food in the microwave, you might see some condensation on the side of your Tupperware because the steam of the food from the microwave. Um, and so now, with that being said, we have to think about okay, what foods kind of do well with steaming? And so, when you make like a curry or you make like dal or lentils, you're boiling it, and so that's how it was normally cooked. And so, steaming it, you're kind of creating a very similar environment to how you initially cooked it. And so then, it's kind of like I don't know why this happens, but it tastes very similar to when you first make it. And another thing too is because it's very liquid, it's an easier heat transfer. When you have a solid piece of chicken, there's going to be cold spots because the heat transfer isn't as good in a solid. But with a liquid or something covered in a sauce, there's an even heat spread, so you won't have those cold spots you famously get from microwaved meals.
Holy shit. That's actually mind blowing. Okay, that's probably why my beef stew tends to taste pretty decent when I re-microwave it because it's kind of like sitting in this liquid and there's veggies and potatoes and all that other stuff with it.
Exactly. I would actually recommend most microwave meals should have a pretty loose sauce on it. That's kind of I feel the key for microwave meals is you want something to kind of coat around with a sauce. or like a soup or something, because you would have more optimal heat transfer. And I also believe because it's analogous to the initial cooking method, it does also provide a better flavor compared to, cooking something like a steak. Like microwaving a steak kind of ruins it.
I don't know a lot about food, but that one I know. Microwaving a steak absolutely just destroys it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like another thing too with meal prepping too, is like a lot of people do make these like huge bunches of these delicious meals that look fantastic, and then you throw it in a microwave and it just kind of becomes goop.
And that's actually that's like a great tip. I mean, as a takeaway, yeah. So kind of with meal prepping, if you're gonna get microwaved, it's having like a slightly saucy liquid-based food will potentially save your meals.
And I mean, this is not maybe a very fancy culinary meal, but Pat, something I've been taking in a lot to the office actually, and something I truly love is Greek yogurt and whey. I think is the best way to have protein.
I knew I we've been talking all this fancy stuff. I knew you were gonna bring up your Greek yogurt away.
Pat, I can make. I've made like mac and cheese recipes that have like 50 grams of protein per serving and only like 30 grams of carbs, like really high protein stuff. But I truly still believe Greek yogurt and whey is my favorite way to get protein. As people can hear it, it's very simple. You just literally have any Greek yogurt, take any whey flavor you like, mix it together, and to me now it's like ice cream. I love it. If you want to be very decadent, you throw in some peanut butter. Oh boy, oh my goodness, that's better than ice cream to me.
I agree with everything you said in this episode except what you just said in the last 30 seconds.
Oh no, it's fair, but yeah, and well, we can actually talk a little bit about whey protein because whey is a funny thing because it's a very good tool to get a lot of protein, but I also feel like if you rely too much on it, you also kind of miss some benefit from micronutrient heavy food because whey truly is just protein. Like you don't really have anything else in it. And also like for some people, it can be hard on your stomach. If you have any kind of dairy sensitivity, it could be very difficult. I think Pat, you do like a beef protein powder, right?
Yeah, well, my update on my protein journey. I was drinking a beef thing and I finished my beef protein powder, which was like fine and serviceable. It was just like very thick and hard to clean. But I my girlfriend actually introduced me to this clear whey protein isolate. Like it's from My Protein, and years ago when I was in high school, I tried those. It's the ones where you shake them up and they're proposed to be like juice and like fruit flavored. But back then they used to taste like ass. It was terrible. But these ones I've been having now, they straight up like there's no clumps, there's no milk flavor, and like it literally tastes like mango juice. And it's 100% protein. It's like it's literally 80 calories and 20 grams of protein. So I've been having that as kind of my treat post workout, and it's been a really good supplement. I finally can say I enjoy drinking protein.
Oh wow, no, that's really cool. I've been playing around a lot with vegan protein powders. There's one from this company called Vivo, which the
Mm.
problem with vegan protein powders is because they can be very high in heavy metals. Since you're condensing a ton of vegetables into a single supplement, and because of unfortunately, due to pollution and factory farming processes, we have very high metals in some of our vegetables. And so, with all that being said, Vivo, they're one of the few companies that actually test their protein and measures how many high metals are in it, so you can get the cleanest product. So I've really been enjoying their stuff so far. So highly recommend it for anyone who's looking for a good vegan protein option.
Nice. Vegan
Yeah,
protein.
please sponsor us, Vivo. But anyways, when we were talking about cooking, I want to talk about arguably the most popular cooking book right now, Greg Doucette's cookbook. Pat, have you had a chance to look at it before, or have you even used some of his recipes?
I've not looked at it, but I've heard about it. You told me about it before, and I can't remember if you loved it or you hated it.
There's one idea of it that I really like, and I think it's something people forget. And it's about volume of food, where if you just eat a bunch of food, you're gonna be satiated. Your stomach's gonna be full. Like people talk about how, oh, all fats can be very filling. Like if you have a handful of nuts, you can be full for the whole day. And Pat, that's not true. I have 5 almonds. 5 almonds are not gonna keep me satiated.
I agree.
So Greg Doucette, I think one of the things he's really captured in the book, and I think the book in itself, it isn't bad, but I think one of the things I don't like about it is it just kind of like throws in like, oh, just add protein powder to something, or like, oh, just buy a high protein version. And I think like any good cookbook should teach you the mechanisms of why you're doing certain things, and then actually teach you how to cook. And then you can kind of start freestyling and find little tips and tricks to make food a lot healthier for yourself. But anyways, I like the idea though of just having volume of food, and that's why I truly think it's so important to find a way to enjoy a lot of vegetables, because vegetables are so low in calories yet so filling. Like you eat like 3 carrots, you would truly feel full from 3 carrots. Now, how can you make those 3 carrots taste good to you?
Yeah. If you're asking me, I'm lazy and I will eat them. What I usually do if I'm trying to eat a lot of vegetables every cutting season is I'll probably try to buy or make vinaigrette or a dressing that just go to. Like there's this one local restaurant in town, Matsuyama, who has this like uh some kind of salad dressing that you can buy in a bottle. And once upon a time, I bought a bottle of it, and I would just literally buy coleslaw from the grocery store, dump it on, and eat the whole thing. So a good sauce and vinaigrette is all I've ever done.
Pat, you should be running this. That is exactly what I would recommend. Is again, yeah. I think one of the key things I try to do is I hide vegetables in sauces. Because again, let's talk about early when I was talking about fat. Fat is the major flavor vehicle for our taste buds. So if you have something covered in fat, you then can just get that flavor of that fat, and you won't even really know maybe flavors of vegetables that you don't enjoy as much. Now, the name of the game though is how can you have the most flavorful like sauce or something with the lowest calorie? And now that's tough. But that is, I think, kind of the fundamentals where you can get like a lot of vegetables in. If you kind of, yeah, hide the flavor a bit with maybe a vinaigrette. Vinaigrettes are great. Or even like some type of sauces or something like that.
Yeah, and I think as summer comes around, like I'm literally just thinking and brainstorming out loud here. But take the salad, you add a vinaigrette, add a grilled meat that you made, you add some, I don't know, cherry tomatoes or anything, and it's a pretty quick meal actually. So, this talk is already starting to open my mind to simple things that we can do.
I mean, like Pat, like just kind of thinking out loud too. You take that same type of vinaigrette. You take kind of like yeah, a good assortment of vegetables, and then you take some chicken breast. You can steam it or boil it, then just kind of shred it, and then you have like a shredded chicken salad, which would be incredibly macro friendly.
Oh man, that's yeah, and I can do that in the instant pot, which is great.
Uh, yeah, that's another thing too. Is also like um when we talk about like the mechanisms of cooking, because like the great thing with like instant pots or slow cookers or anything like that is you can get very flavorful products. And one of the key things is you can take very tough lean cuts of meat and make them very very tender and delicious. So something like a beef roast can actually be incredibly macro friendly. Like you take like an eye of round roast, which is has almost no fat to it. It's an incredibly lean cut, but then you slow cook it for hours and hours. You have this very tender, meaty, delicious thing that is very high in protein. So, I think there is like some true like I love that you have an instant pot. That's a great tool, and I think slow cookers are great for anyone who doesn't really like enjoy cooking but want to make very good macro friendly meals.
Yeah, and I think it's just a good gateway tool because it's not very hard to use. You just throw in the ingredients and then you see success, and it's nice to see some success, right? Because I know the pan is not the hardest thing ever, but if you're really bad in the kitchen like I am, it's very easy to screw up, and then you just feel bad about the whole idea.
Well, let's talk about tools, Pat, because that's another thing. I think some people maybe don't want to cook as much because like they're like, okay, I don't want to spend like $300 on all these pots and pans and all that stuff. And you know what? I get it. I'm a cheap man. I don't like spending money on many things either. But I think though for doing a large variety of recipes, you actually don't need too much. I would say if anyone's listening to this and they want to start getting into cooking, you probably only need five things. You would need a cutting board, you would need a good quality knife, and a good quality. You can get like the knife I have was $25 on Amazon. So you can just like Google or like go on Reddit, and there's some very good cheap suggestions. I'm not saying to buy one of like those like fancy Japanese ones that cost like $2,000. Yeah, no, we don't need that. We just need like a decent $25 knife. Um,
Nice.
uh, and then I would recommend getting a non-stick oven-safe frying pan. So we want to do non-stick for one of the reasons is we want to minimize the amount of fat we need to cook with. So one of the reasons people use fat for cooking too is to kind of create a non-stick on the pan so the food doesn't stick to everything. But we can go with non-stick just so we don't have to drown everything in fat and we can just have the optimal amount of fat to give that flavor vehicle for our food. Um, but we also want one that's oven safe. So the one I've got, and it's safe for 400 degrees in the oven. Make sure your pan says it's oven safe. Those who do not say it's oven safe could risk actually like having some dangerous chemicals for you to inhale, and we don't want anyone to have that. So definitely look into it. There's some very good brands. I think there's like a popular one called Mizzen, who they do a lot of oven safe non-stick pans. So maybe check them out. I don't use one. I got mine from a grocery store here in Austin, Texas. Um, and then probably just like a wooden spoon or like something you can mix stuff or like use on the pan. Like you would want to use something either wooden or rubber because you don't want to scrape the non-stick layer because metal will scrape it. So you want to use something wooden or rubber, but anything really, and maybe a bowl. Like I would say, like if you can get those five things, you could probably make man at least 100 different recipes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's how you use the tools, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think though, like, there's a lot of variety you can do with that because, like, okay, if it's oven safe, then you can do like roast in that, and then boom, you have all this assortment of roast.
Mm.
And then, of course, like your standard frying pan, you can do eggs, you can do sauces, you can even like boil pasta in it and have it like that, or even like cook rice in it. I've done rice in a frying pan too. It was fantastic. Um,
That's as a Chinese person, that's baffling.
Well, because like
Nice.
yeah, because all you needed to do is like once you got the rice boiling, I just needed to make a seal so it could steam. So I think I took like some aluminum foil and just
Yeah,
bring it around.
yeah,
But yeah, so I think like you really don't need that many tools to cook. I think some people get a little overloaded where you just get like an accessory for everything, which can be a little much.
yeah. Man, those are great tips. Keep it short and simple.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, again, we want to make a low barrier of entry, and also like I don't know. I think cooking's fun. Do you enjoy cooking?
You know, it. I've actually grown to kind of enjoy it. Like I make very simple things, but like for example, a stew or a stir fry or just like frying some chicken thighs. And then like I really believe in starting from the most basic things because you get to like just like personal training and picking simple movements. It's like and I get to see some success. I'm still on my journey here, but hope is that I get to see more success and eventually I'll be much more open minded to trying challenging things and being and where I'm sure you've had recipes where you failed a bit, and then once you're further along, like I want to get to that point where I can be, flexible with making a mistake here and there and learning, and I think it's a good time.
No, completely. And I think you have I mean, you have completely the right attitude. I think even for myself, there's like times where, I want to challenge myself and be like, okay, let's try it trickier. Let's try to make something trickier now. And again, I think it is a learning process where, you try new things, you get new skills, and you just keep on improving and improving. And, I think cooking is a great hobby to have, not only because you can save so much money, but I think it's also I love cooking for people. I think it's one of the great things is that you can cook and show appreciation to people, and it's always a great thing to do.
Oh man, like, and I think that's like a goal for me too, to get to the point where I'm like proud to show off my product to people, right? And yeah, it's probably one of the best love languages in the world, right? Being able to cook.
Definitely, definitely. But yeah, I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything else you think we might have missed, or we want to maybe talk more about like food and cooking and stuff like that?
Oh, I think we had some like super good actionable tips today. Like I learned a lot from you, and I don't know about everyone else, but I'm feeling very hungry now and also very motivated to go out there and try cooking something. Like you've made it a lot less intimidating.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think probably like yeah, the big tips. I mean, I think probably the best thing for someone to do is like what's a food you really like to go and eat and try cooking it yourself. And then like then you can also once you kind of get the hang of it, you can start customizing it and making it your own and making it healthier or well, I don't want to use healthy, but you can make it fit better with what your body goals are.
Definitely. And you taught me this bit, but I used to eat out a lot more than I do now, and even though I can't cook a lot of things, like learning to cook some things, I'm less inclined to eat out as often as I used to because I'm like, well, this and this thing, I could make a similar version at home, or I could have a bigger portion at home for a third of the price, and it really even just like changes perspective for people who like to eat out a lot because they think they can't cook. A lot of things are easier than we think.
You know, Pat, it's funny. I actually I had to travel a few months ago, and I used to love hotel breakfast. You know, like those free breakfast you get. But
Oh
like
yeah.
I've kind of like I've gotten like my eggs, like my scrambled eggs are so good. I love how I make my scrambled eggs. They're amazing. But I cannot eat anyone else's scrambled eggs. Like I have found what works for me so well that like now like I'm kind of picky now.
Yeah, yeah, honestly, like one of the dumbest things I learned to make was like, like just like basic like marinated eggs, like the ones you'd find in like a ramen restaurant. And now like I'm very hesitant to eat them all the time because I'm like, wow, I could make like 10 of these things for like $4 and they charge me $2 for one of them at a restaurant. It's crazy.
Dude, have you made them before? I've been thinking about doing it for a while because you're right, they're very simple to make and they're so good. Have you made them yet? Have you done it? Those fermented eggs?
Yeah, well the ones they make for ramen are not fermented eggs. They're just like a soy base and essentially it's like soy sauce, mirin, and like a couple other things, garlic and whatnot. And like, sure, to make it perfectly like the ones they do in restaurant, you might not get the exact same taste. But Anwar, I feel like you probably could. Like mine are like 90% there. I'm pretty happy with it.
Damn, dude, no, I'm gonna have to make some for myself. No, that'd be good. Yeah, no, that would be fun to do. Yeah, and I mean, like, kind of adding to it, it is kind of fun to always try new things. Like, I don't know if you remember, but a while ago, I made some like of those like Chinese hand pulled noodles, and that was like a lot of fun to make. And I need to make some like beef noodle soup. That would be really good to make.
If you're making beef noodle soup, you gotta be back in town because I gotta try it.
I'll let you know. Although I feel that one, beef noodle soup might be harder to compete with some of the locals because they've definitely mastered their recipes with that.
That's one that takes supposedly a lot of hours. So, but hey, if anyone's up to the challenge, I think you are.
I appreciate it, man. Look at us. We're gonna be making so many gains and cooking gains. We can do like a whole natty Iron Chef.
Yeah, it might be a thing.
All right. Well, you know what, Pat? I think we've left a lot of great stuff. Uh, thank you all for listening. It has been always great, and hope you all make some natty gains. Hope you all make some natty gains in the kitchen. Would love to hear what people have been making. Any fun tips you guys may have for us. Always love to hear. But with that, natty news out.
Natty news out.